Hello and welcome to another episode of The Pod Well Travelled. I'm Penny Thomas and today I'm in the studio with our travel editor, Stephen Scourfield. Welcome back to the podcast, Stephen.
Hi, Penny.
Today's episode is all about preparing for Antarctica, which is a big sort of topic when you actually get into it. We've decided to talk about this because I am about to go to Antarctica for the first time, and it's a place that you've been quite a few times, I believe. So you sort of are aware of what you need to do in preparation for a big trip like this. So we'll try to unpack a few things in today's episode in case other listeners are as inquisitive as I am.
Yeah, well, it's a great moment, isn't it? Because this has come at you sort of by surprise, really, you know, with short notice.
Yes.
So I'm sure there's lots of questions in your head, and I'm sure that's reflected in the audience. Added to which, of course, you know, it's a big undertaking. It's an expensive thing to do. It's probably once in a lifetime. So, you know, I'm guessing people are excited, nervous, plus, you know, thinking about the cost and is it worth doing and all those things. So we thought we'd play this game. You ask me the questions and I'll try to answer them.
Yeah, and hopefully you can help me prepare. And I think I should probably tell our listeners that I am very excited about the upcoming trip, but yes, also quite nervous because I am someone who doesn't have the best track record with seasickness. So I've come to you for advice.
Let's start with that.
Let's see how we go.
Let's start with that.
Yeah, so should a person that is prone to seasickness even go on a trip like this?
Good question. Yes, look, I think it's not what it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, because the ships have changed so much. So firstly, I think you can feel more confident about the current brand of the current designs of ships that are going to Antarctica. I do think that there's different ways of doing it. You can fly to King Edward Island and jump on a ship there. There are some hiccups with that. So basically that misses the Drake Passage.
Okay.
I think really we're talking about going to the Antarctic Peninsula, which is almost an extension of the Andes in South America. So you've got the Andes running right down as a spine down South America. They duck under the Drake Passage and then pop up again as the Antarctic Peninsula. Mm-hmm. So the peninsula is the place to go because it's the furthest north in Antarctica, and it's rock, which means that everything goes there to nest. All the penguins go there to nest. So it's the right spot. It gets summer first and lasts longest, mm-hmm. and it's rock. The rest is sort of ice. So penguins need stones to build nests. So everything about going from South America, from Ushuaia mainly, is good. But crossing the Drake Passage is the issue. Mm. So if you imagine the ocean just going right around the planet, and then between this, if you put your thumb and your forefinger almost together, that's what you've got with South America and the Antarctic Peninsula. You've got this pinch point which it all pushes through. So that's why it gets, you know, the Cape Horn reputation. Having said that, you see the ships now, for example, you're going to be on the Roald Amundsen, mm-hmm. the Hurtigruten ship.
Yes.
That ship, the X-bow, the Ulston bow ships, like Aurora have, for example, they're faster. They have different stabilizers, and it's a whole different ball game. Mm-hmm. So just being faster, just being quicker across the passage makes a big difference. The way they can handle swell makes a big difference. So I think you can feel more confident about it than even 10 years ago when you were rolling around on the academic Yoffe, which was a Russian, you know, ship sent down there. And it was a different era. Even in 10 years, it's a different era.
Yeah.
So firstly, feel confident about that. Secondly, there's all sorts of things you can do. Now, look, my go-to is Finnegan, which I find really, you can take it before you go. So basically you leave, we're mainly talking about Ushuaia, mm-hmm. In the bottom end of Argentina. You leave there sort of late afternoon, tea time-ish. Mm-hmm. Then there's a bit of chat and safety stuff on board and all those things as you're coming down. Then you go down the Beagle Channel. That's all good. Everything's great. And, you know, I mean, the seasickness kind of starts in your head before you even start. It's probably started now because you're thinking about it.
Absolutely.
You come down the Beagle Channel, then about 11 o'clock at night, you go, everything's changing. You can feel the swell because you come out of the Beagle Channel sort of and you're starting to get into the Drake Passage. What I'm saying is you've got plenty of time to take whatever it is that you think will suit you when you get on the ship.
And that's because you need to take them before you feel...
take it before you feel anything. The other thing is that, and we used to get them here in Australia where we're based, but you can get them in South America, and this is SCOP. It's scoptamine, which is like a incredible... It's a pretty big sort of anti-nausea medication to take. You buy this as a little stick-on plaster that you put behind your ear. John Bertrand used to wear one on Australia too because he got seasickness on the great West Australian 12-metre America's Cup winning boat. And you can get SCOPs in South America and they'll have them on the ship. So, also, if you're worried about this, if you've got time in Ushuaia, you can go to a chemist there and they'll help you because everyone's worried about this and they go to the chemist in Ushuaia. Also, when you get on the ship, it will have a medical centre with a doctor who does this trip backwards and forwards all the time with people who are worried about this. So you can actually wait and get advice on the ship from people who just deal with this issue on the ship all the time. So, don't worry about it. I think is a good start. Take things that you think will help is good. If you do get sick on the ship, you will get help. And they've got all sorts of ways of helping you on the ship with medication. Yeah.
And I guess, is the experience worth the queasiness? Because in those moments of seasickness, you just want to sort of eject yourself out of wherever you are and be in a nice comfy space where you're not feeling sick. But I presume that the actual experience that you're going to do is really worth it.
That's right. Well, let's just talk about the Drake Passage to begin with. Firstly, because, as I said, you can sort of fly and miss a bit of the Drake Passage. But honestly, I mean, I think I like the Drake Passage as much as the peninsula now. Albatross is flying, you see your first penguins jumping out of the water. And it is an environment. It's an amazing environment. And I do feel that Antarctica is such a big thing in our lives if you're going to visit, that you kind of earn the privilege that approaching it across the Drake Passage is part of the experience, but is also part of the sort of payment for getting there. When you are at Brown Base or you're in the Lemaire Channel, you will be so thrilled that you're experiencing this place. I'm pretty sure that you'll be glad that you've earned it. So yes, I do think it's worth it. Yeah, is the answer. I do think it's worth it, and I don't see it as a barrier. Just one other thing though. Expedition cruise companies like to fill up the Drake Passage with lectures and this and that. Just sort of be cautious about that, because you can be up on deck in the fresh air looking at the horizon, and that's good. But when you get in a lecture room sometimes, and you're just listening to someone talking, which will be interesting. Bear in mind all those things are on their system as well, so you can watch them on a screen later. But just be cautious about just sitting for hours in a lecture room listening to someone talking. You might just go and stand on deck if you're feeling vulnerable to these things and look at the horizon. The best spot on the ship, if you're feeling queasy, in my opinion, is if you can get to the back and get low down and stand in the middle of the ship. Very often there's like a loading deck where they keep the Zodiacs or the ribs or whatever it is. Just try and be at the back of the ship, and just sort of stand in the middle so you get less roll. And obviously, the closer you are to the waterline, the less roll. So it's quite interesting on ships because the more expensive, the higher you go, the more expensive the cabins are, and the bigger the roll is. Yeah. So you got pitch and yaw on a ship. You've got two different things. You've got the ship going backwards and forwards and side to side. But of course, all that is exacerbated the higher up you are in the suites. So, try and stay lower in the ship, central in the ship, and that all just is reduced.
Yeah.
Anyway, apart from that, just forget it.
Okay. Well, I am set to leave at the end of December, which is sort of the season to go. What is the weather like down there at that time?
Well, one of the things, season's October to March.
Okay.
So you're right in the middle. So you'll be there. The penguins will have nested. The season's been a bit later, so warming seas mean more snow. So you get warming seas, which we all know, climate change, transpiration, cold winds, snow on the peninsula. Penguins can't nest until they've got stones, so they have to wait for the snow to melt, basically. So like last year I was there, they were about a month late. So you'll be there as they're hatching. So you'll still have clean penguins, white snow, because once they hatch, it all gets a bit quagmire-y.
Mm-hmm.
So while we always think about dressing for the cold, I mean, there are two ways to get cold in Antarctica. One is to get cold, and generally that happens, when they do cruising in the Zodiacs. Mm-hmm. So they'll just drive around the icebergs and all that sort of stuff in the Zodiacs, and you're sitting there on the side wall of a black rib, inflatable boat, and if it's a bit windy and you're at an angle, some water spray will be coming over, the odd wave might come over and you get wet, and then you'll get cold. But the other way, so obviously Hurtigruten, all these companies really give you a jacket as part of the trip. So you've got a waterproof jacket there. One trick is always take a really good pair of waterproof pants.
Okay.
It's absolutely the one thing, not the kind of, nylon rainbirdy things, like a really good solid pair of waterproof pants, which will fit over the boots they lend you. So they lend you long boots. They're not exactly Wellingtons. They're like a closed cell foam warm boot. And you need a pair of trousers that go over the boots and have a good Velcro bottom so that you're sealed in. And trust me, the waterproof pants, game changer. Mm-hmm. But then what I'm getting to is the other way to get cold there is to get hot and sweaty. So then you get on shore, you land, you go for a walk up through the snow, fantastic, up to look over it, and like it's sunny, and you go, so everything you have, make sure you can unzip it. Mm-hmm. So it's no, like if you've got this, and you've got lots of layers, which is, we all know layers the trick. So you've got base layers, mid layers, try and avoid cotton, because it just gets wet and then it gets cold. If it gets wet, it gets cold. So more those sort of thermal layers, but try and have layers which unzip. So you can, as you're walking through the snow, which is deep, they've made a path, but it's still, you go, shit, it's hot. So you undo your jacket a bit, then you do the thing, and just be able to, you'll find you're down to your T-shirt, literally, and you open everything up, let all the steam out. Because if you get hot and sweaty, then you get in the Zodiac and go, we'll go and have a look at these icebergs for an hour. That's when you get cold. So lots of layers, try and make sure you can unzip them. Lots of things around your neck, a couple of those head socks if you like those, or I just wear scarves because again you can just loosen that, like silk scarves sort of things. You can let those go a bit, whereas the pull-on head sock type pieces, you're in that. But having said that, something that pulls up over your nose, over your ears, so you can really kind of cover your face up in the Zodiac, that's a good thing too. So it'll be both cold and it can be very sunny and warm as well.
Yeah, okay. And gloves are a must?
Gloves are a must. Gee, I've got a thing about gloves. So an inner glove, like a thinnish sort of, glove.
Yeah.
I also take I take fingerless gloves to pull over that. So if it's a cold day, and you always think about the really cold days, you've got gloves, but you want to be able to use your phone, use your camera. What generally I really don't advise is using, over the top of that, using ski gloves. So lots of people will take nylon, puffy ski gloves to go over those. Well, the problem with that is if a wave does come over the side of the Zodiac and you get wet, those will then just freeze. So just get a pair of industrial sort of waterproof gloves, almost like rubber gloves, to go over the top, because your hands will stay dry. Then you can, when you get on shore, you can take those off because you don't need them, stick them in your backpack, or get a clip, the glove clips that hang gloves off you.
Yeah.
Get that, get rid of them, and you've got your nice soft gloves which you can use, with a nice little, you can get gloves now with a little rubbery finger that you can use your camera and your phone or whatever else.
Yeah.
That's the trick. But the waterproof, and it's like a $10, $5 pair of waterproof gloves, gold.
Okay, good advice. And I guess whilst we're on sort of what to bring, what else would you pack that you think is necessary?
Well, look, I think with your cameras and your phone gear, one of the things is a power board, because generally you do a morning expedition and an afternoon expedition. So the cold will do your batteries in. So batteries hate cold. So have spare batteries for your camera, of course. Try and keep them in an inside pocket next to your body to keep them warm. And we're always talking about cold days, when with a minus temperature plus a bit of wind in the Zodiac and the odd bit of spray, it's a cold day, right? So keep them tucked inside. And then, but what you want to do is you want to be able to come onto the ship, put all the batteries you want to charge, line them up in your phone and your phone power bank and all that, all plugged in, right? Then go to lunch, get yourself warm, have lunch, come back and everything's charged. If you've just got one charger or something, one adapter, whatever it is, you do that and then you've charged that one battery, and then suddenly they go, right, blues, blue group, down to the mudroom, and we're off, and you go, oh, I'm not, you're not really ready. So come in, put everything onto charge. So a power board's really good, or enough adapters that, and if you're serious with your photography, take more than one battery charger, clip in charge unit. With your phone, take a power bank for sure, with backup power.
Yeah.
Because the cold will affect the battery life. So I think that's a really good tip. On a super cold day, like if you've been using your phone or your camera and it feels like it's really, really cold, put it in a Ziploc bag or a really waterproof bag before you get on the ship and let it warm up slowly. Otherwise, it will draw in the moisture from the ship.
Okay. So
bag things and then just leave them in your room. Let it come up to temperature itself. I've actually seen big, $15,000 lenses with moisture inside because they haven't been bagged and they've drawn it. I'm talking about really cold days when you think your camera feels like a block of ice. It's that chilled. And then you come into the ship, which is, 22 degrees or 21 degrees or 23 degrees. That's quite a big shift for it. So just put it in a bag and let it warm up very slowly on its own, naturally. Don't have to worry about it. Leave it in the room, go to lunch.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good thing to take with you.
I guess on the phones and cameras, I've just got an iPhone and it does take pretty good photos. Would you recommend I do take a bigger camera as well?
Look, I think with the iPhone's so good. You'll use it. Obviously be careful with it. In Zodiacs and things, you're always tempted to get your phone out and take pictures. I mean, there are moments. So if you're taking a picture in a Zodiac, if you tell the driver, they'll kind of stop and position it so it doesn't get all sloppy and wet. But really, the odd picture when it's nice and calm of people in the Zodiac's fun. But you're not, kind of keep it in a waterproof bag, obviously, and use it sparingly there. When you're on shore, your iPhone will do, or your Samsung will do 90% of what you want, and they'll do it really well. The issue is exposures. It's just very difficult because you've got all this reflected light off snow. So you can be 3 or 4 stops out with your camera and everything looks a bit gluggy and grey, and it's quite difficult. And honestly, the phone photography will do that better in most circumstances than than I can do with the camera now, I mean, so if you've got, I do say, if you're going to Antarctica, prepare early. If you're going to use your phone, make sure you've got the iPhone 14, iPhone 15 Pro, or the Samsung 23, or whatever it is. Do your upgrade and think about that 6 months beforehand, if you can, or 4 months beforehand. Get the phone set up and get used to it. Learn how to really use the camera. But in addition to that, I mean, the thing is, if you're thinking about Antarctica, I'd mix in a super zoom with that. Okay. So if you don't want to carry a lot of gear, and also with a super zoom, so for example, the Sony RX10, which is a really kind of serious camera, Zeiss lens, 24-600 analog lens, not digital, built in, so you don't have to change lenses. You never change lenses, so you get away from this moisture issue and this cold and moisture and heating up and so on. So a super zoom, which could be as simple as a little Canon SX7T, it could be a Sony RX7. It's a pretty good RX10. Sorry, it's a pretty good answer to that because you're not changing lenses.
Yeah. Okay.
Length is the issue because you want these nice pictures of penguins and this and this and this. So I'd think about a super zoom.
Yeah. Okay, good advice. And I guess talking about the exposure, it just also reminded me, what about sunglasses?
Yes, absolutely. Oh, I should have said that.
Yes.
Good thinking. Sunglasses, sun cream, absolutely.
Yeah, and UV.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because, it's coming up as much as it's coming down. So if you're wearing a cap or a hat or whatever you're wearing, you'll get all the bounce up into you as well. That's exactly right. 2 pairs of socks, thin pair, thick pair, allow for that with the boots, but the boots that you'll be lent will be good. Underneath those thick waterproof pants, not jeans, because they're sort of cotton, and if they do get damp or if you're just sweaty, they just get caggy. So I'd just go, thermally tracky sort of things, maybe 2 pairs. I always take a pair of long johns because on a cold day you go long johns, polary plus sort of pants, waterproof pants, gold.
Yep.
Done. Unzipping top, lots of stuff around your neck, and obviously a beanie, and then you've got your hood on your jacket too. Just with your packing, bear in mind that you're going to bring that jacket home.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. To factor that in with
factor
space.
that in.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
I mean, you don't need an awful lot of stuff, I think, do you? It's just the practical items. Like it's when you're on the actual vessel, there's no expectation to bring formal wear or anything like that.
On the vessel, deck shoes, trainers, whatever. Normal sort of casual clothes. Normally they don't overheat the ship, so I'm thinking like 21, maybe 22 degrees, that sort of thing on board. So you'll probably be wearing a light jumper or something, a light polar jacket, those sorts of things. But no, not formal. And don't expect too much. I mean, they will do laundry on ships, of course, but don't expect sort of too much to overload the system because they'll be using reverse osmosis to water makers and so I try not to overload that system, but so take as much as you can, try to reduce the laundry.
Okay. I guess what about when you are in Antarctica and you are going on little adventures during the day? I think you mentioned there's usually one in the morning, one in the afternoon. How long do those sort of little trips go for, and how long are you expected to be out in the cold for? Yeah, well,
look, it might be 3 hours. It might be a little longer. It might be a bit shorter. I mean, there is make sure, have breakfast. I like to go early for breakfast. Make sure, you've done the whole washroom thing. Because then suddenly they go, all right, red group down to the boat, and go, oh, great. So you're trying to get gear on, and then you've got this layer, and you've got your long johns, and of course you get hot in the ship.
Yeah.
And you're a bit flustered because you're not used to all this stuff. And then you go down to the mud room, and everyone's jammed in there together, and, and you're always trying to get your gear on, and you go, oh, I wish I'd gone to the bathroom. Well, you can't go to the bathroom onshore. So if you need to go to the bathroom, you've got to go back to the ship in the Zodiac when there's one available. So you kind of want to get all that organised before you go. So probably 3 hours, I'm thinking, in the morning, back for lunch, something similar in the afternoon. You know, in the afternoon ones also, I sort of feel like in the afternoon when they do Zodiac cruising, as they call it, which are in the dinghies, you know, looking around and so on, that's when you're sitting. So that's probably what, if they say, look, this afternoon we're going to go for a Zodiac cruise, you probably want to think of the clothing a bit more. And if they go, this morning we're going to go on shore, Brown Base, and we're going to walk to the top of the hill, you go, okay, well, that's a slightly different scenario. Make sure you can unzip because you're going to get warm, blah, blah. So, I'd think about 3 hours. Yeah.
Okay, easy. And what about the wildlife and marine life that I can expect to see when I'm there?
Well, I do want you on deck looking for albatrosses.
Okay.
And you want wind. You know, you want a bit of rough weather in the Drake Passage because albatrosses need about 20 kilometres an hour of wind to fly because it's the uplift. They can't fly without the uplift. So if it's not windy, if it's dead flat calm in the Drake Passage, they're just sitting on the surface like big ducks. It's terribly disappointing. So we want wind, right?
I didn't think I wanted that, but
yeah, you really want wind because you see royal albatrosses, you'll see the wandering albatrosses, and they'll just hang around at the back of the ship, just in these figures of 8 at the back. I can just stand it there all day, just shooting pictures of albatrosses. I'm so happy. You'll see the first penguins, they're like little wind-up toys just jumping across the surface. Yeah. And then as you get there, you see your first iceberg. As you come to the Antarctic Peninsula, I mean, you'll see gentoo penguins, chinstrap penguins. If you're lucky, you'll see a leopard seal. You'll see crab-eater seals, lots of those on the icebergs. If you see a leopard seal hunting, they'll actually rock the icebergs to try and get the other seals to roll off so they can pick them off the other side. And there's a pretty good chance you'll be in Disco Bay or somewhere surrounded by whales. I mean, literally surrounded by whales. So, and for anyone listening, you know, the season, as I mentioned, goes October to March. And I mean, a time of year that I also really like in Antarctica is the end of the season because you're heading into winter. So everything's feeding up. It's a very animated time, lots and lots of marine life. I mean, the whales are just feeding on krill, which are these little shrimps, because then they're going to migrate north. You know, over the Australian side, they come up and they sort of divide up the West Australian coast and across up, you know, across the Bight to breed. They have their young and then they come back down. So it's a really important feeding time. So everything's animated, everything's getting ready for winter. Seals are feeding, everything's hunting. It's on, you know, so don't be scared about those late sailings in March. You think all the penguins are sort of done and the chicks are fledged and up, but they also are feeding up ready for winter too. So that's a good time of year.
Okay, and
you'll see all of that.
No, I'm very excited. I'm sort of, I don't know what to expect, but I'm learning as we go. And I think it will just be in the moment. I'll get to realise the true beauty of it all. And I guess we should probably touch on insurance for a place like Antarctica.
Yeah.
Travel insurance is important, I think, every time you go travelling, but there must be, you must have to really look at the policy you're getting for this type of trip.
You're going to need a medical, and you're going to need, I mean, you're going to have travel insurance. I mean, no one's going to take you to Antarctica without proper insurance, and they're going to want to, you know, the expedition cruise company is going to want the details of your insurance before you go. So it's absolutely crucial. I will say this, and I see this a lot now, that you know, the decade markers 70, 80 really ramp up travel insurance anyway. And I'm also seeing with some policies 75 becoming a kind of landmark as well. So, you know, I am sort of saying that if you've got this in mind, the sooner rather than later is going to be a good thing. You're going to need insurance as you're look, risk obviously increases with age, or is seen to increase with age, I should say. Look into that as part of the cost of the trip. So when you're thinking that it's going to cost you however much it's going to cost you for the trip, you've really got to then kind of dig around and get quotes for insurance, because that is part of the cost.
Yep.
You're absolutely right. There's no way around it. And you need good insurance. I mean, if you have to be evacuated from Antarctica, it's got to be covered by insurance. So a big part of it. In Australia, I'd probably start with, if you are based in Australia, look at a company called comparetravelinsurance.com.au. They pull together, they just do travel insurance comparisons, and they pull together some of these things. So that will be a starting point for you. But certainly, absolutely. Also, the company that you're considering cruising with, for example, Hurtigruten, they'll have sort of great insight into which insurance companies cover properly, for the situations that they obviously have assessed, the risk of. And also, even on board a lot of ships, there's various ways to go to Antarctica, and also there's what I call the drive-bys. So there are bigger ships going down there, which aren't aiming to land and get you off. You can only have 100 people on the ice at any one time.
Okay.
So the bigger ships don't even try to do that. They drive past and you see icebergs and have some touch, see Antarctica in that way. But even on a lot of ships, if you need medical help, they will charge for it, and your insurance needs to cover that, because they'll have full medical services on board, but that will cost as well. So you do need to think about all of that, absolutely.
Yeah, and there are risks involved when you go anywhere. But we were sort of talking about some explorers earlier on, just off air, and I think that sort of leads me into some of your favourite explorers that have been to Antarctica and experienced it many, many, many moons ago. Can you tell me a bit about your favourite explorers?
Look, travel does, it opens up all these veins, doesn't it, that you then start to investigate and follow, and it opens up new stories and new ways of thinking for us. Antarctica certainly does that. The African age of explorers was very much a scientific age. So, it was all about going to that continent which was inhabited, but also, we very much scientifically logging and categorizing and collecting data and so on. Because you get to Antarctica, and it was the heroic age. So really the stories from Antarctica are the stories of the explorers, because most of Antarctica, notwithstanding what we've said about the peninsula, most of it, basically in our terms, there was nothing there except ice and snow. So the stories imposed upon it are the stories of the explorers. So it's a very romantic age. So it does bring us to these human stories in a they're painted on a white canvas. So the stories stand out, and they're very colourful and stark against this white canvas of Antarctica. Shackleton is the story that we obviously know best. Sir Ernest Shackleton coming down in the Endurance, which of course was found recently, that amazing footage of them finding it at the bottom of the Weddell Sea, so fairly quickly, trapped in ice. Frank Hurley, the Australian filmographer, was actually filming the ship. You can see the footage of it cracking and so on. The crew living on the ice. Shackleton setting off in the James Caird, the small open boat up to South Georgia. Amazing small boat voyage. The James Caird actually is in the Maritime Museum in the UK now, which in Greenwich. The actual boat.
Wow. Brilliant.
Anyway, so we all know the sort of Shackleton story, but then, you're actually going to Antarctica on the MS Roald Amundsen, which is it's a hybrid powered Hurtigruten expedition ship built in Norway. And of course, this is a Norwegian company. And Amundsen was the first man to the South Pole. So he got there before Scott, and we sort of know the Scott story, you know, how they all gradually perished. And Scott was seen as a heroic figure, but really Amundsen was the man, you know. He'd lived within you. He totally understood these environments. He was totally prepared. He set off with, you know, 4 men, 52 dogs, 4 sledges, and just knew how to live on the ice, how to live in that environment, how to look after the dogs, how to survive. So Amundsen sort of set off and, you know, fairly simply but stoically got to, you know, the South Pole. He was planning to go to the North Pole, but after he'd heard that, you know, Robert Peary had got there, he immediately switched to the South Pole and went, I'll go there instead, and just went there and got there. And of course, you know, as we know, Scott was second. So it does open up all these stories. And Amundsen, for me, was a re-education, because I grew up with the Shackleton, the English Shackleton heroic story. And then you start to learn about Amundsen, you go, wow, this guy was incredible. I mean, there were lots of flaws in Shackleton's plan compared with Amundsen, who was also the first person to completely sail through the Northwest Passage.
Okay.
So incredible. So for you, it opens up all these new stories and characters and histories. And I do encourage you to dig into the Swedish expedition, which preceded Shackleton, which had a similar experience.
Yeah, I'll have to do some research. It sounds so fascinating.
I was just going to say to you, you know, on all these ships, and certainly with Hurtigruten, which has, you know, 100 years of polar experience, you've got such great experts on board who will unfold all these stories. Interestingly, I think from a more of a Norwegian perspective. So I'd be very interested to do a trip with them from that perspective myself, you know, whereas a lot of the others are very caught up in the Shackleton story, but it'll be interesting for you. But certainly there'll be amazing people on board telling about the human story, the environmental story, certainly the changes that are happening, you know, with climate in Antarctica, the fauna, the wildlife, the bird life. You'll have birders on board. They'll be out on that back deck with you looking for albatrosses. Fantastic. Yeah. So yeah, it all happens on board. And of course, these companies are so... Antarctica is interesting also because the operators work together through the international organisation that they've formed and willingly joined. And they, you know, I spent quite a lot of time on the bridge with the expedition team and these on the trips that we've done, and they'll talk. The ships are talking to each other. You know, they're arranging. You know, we're here. Okay, that's good. We're here. We're going there. So they're working together, and they're very conscious. They're there because they're conscious of the environment and they're conscious of also of the safety issues. So it is even the Antarctic Treaty, which I'm sure you'll enjoy reading into, is a fair example of many countries working together. You know, mostly for a common goal of, you know, understanding but also protecting this place. So I think the Antarctic Treaty it's not a completely bright globe for us to look at, but it is one. Or, you know, everything down there works because it's such a demanding place, interesting place. Yeah,
and it's not an easy place to get to, and there's a lot of planning and things that have to go on to get people there. So I think that leads me to one of my last questions, which is it worth all the money to go there?
Look, it's an interesting question because if you add up, and I have done this many times, if you do a 10 or 12 day trip from Ushuaia to the Antarctic Peninsula, you know, you're going to, you know, and you do the Zodiac thing, you know, and you sit and watch penguins for 15 minutes here. I mean, you might add it up and you go, well, out of that, there's probably less than 2 hours of, you know, really, I was sitting in the bay there and the whales all around me and they're coming under the Zodiac and stuff. So you add up, but that was 15 minutes, then we moved on, then there was stuff. But the overall experience, it can be so dramatic that, as I say, it has a bigger echo. So yes, I do think it's worth the money. I do think that it's really important now that these ships are so well designed. They weigh everything on, they weigh everything off. They're very careful about waste management, water management. So this is a hybrid powered ship, the Roald Amundsen, for example. So I think the touch on Antarctica is lighter than the old heavy diesel ships and so on. Mm-hmm. So I'm happy about that. I think, I take inspiration from lots of scientists I know who say that, we protect the places that we know and love. So by going and understanding this, understanding the issues with the krill feeding, with climate change, with the extra snow, with the later seasons, makes us more sensitive people, and we spread the story. So, yeah, I do think it is an amazing learning lesson for us, and I think it's a dramatic memory. So I do think it's worth it, yes.
Oh, good. I'm very excited. It sounds like an epic adventure.
Now, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Do you feel a bit better now?
I do. I'm really excited about, I think, just getting there. I think crossing the Drake Passage will test me, but hopefully I come out feeling well and really enjoy my time whilst I'm in Antarctica.
Yeah, fantastic. Look, and the Drake Passage now can be so quick. So it's more like a day and a half now where, say you'll leave on that evening, you get through the next day, and by the next afternoon you can be doing a landing. So because the ships are faster and better, just think about that.
I'll get lots out of this trip, I know. I'm very excited.
Fantastic. I look forward to your stories online, of course, and in print, but I look forward as much to these. I know you're writing now your sort of feelings about the preparation, so I think that that's as interesting perhaps for the audience as the reaction when you get there, because it's this build-up which can, I do talk to people who go, I don't even know why I'm doing this, so.
Yeah.
I'm just thrilled that you're going.
Yeah, big trip, but very excited, as I said before. Okay, well, thank you for joining me today, Stephen, and I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about in future episodes as well. But for today, that's all.
Thanks very much.